Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief. A stick inside their skull would...
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 72. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Heroes and Champions. Here are some recent comments about this podcast, and I really appreciate the kind words. Tom on YouTube says, "Amazing content. You deserve more subscribers." I agree. I usually push subscribing to YouTube or Podomatic when I upload or at the end of this show. But on YouTube, I currently have a little over 100 subscribers, and YouTube starts paying creators once they reach the 1,000 subscriber mark. So, do me a favor, tell your friends about the Fun Ideas Podcast, and get them to subscribe too. It's just a click of a button on my YouTube page. Also, I'd appreciate it if you became a Patreon of me. It does cost some money, mainly for storage space, to do this show, so if I could get at least $100 a month from outside sources, that will help defray some of the costs in doing it. Of course, you can advertise like Lee's Comics does. Rates are low, and they run for the entire season. Contact me at funideas.mark@gmail.com if interested. As far as Fun Ideas Productions is concerned, I'm doing well during the pandemic, and I'm working on the Mad book and on the new Disney book, and 4 articles for Back Issue magazine. Headquartered, the book about the monkey solo years that I wrote with Michael A. Ventrella is my latest book. And look for the Warren Kremer book and the TTV scrapbook soon. Of course, I'm continuing this podcast during the summer for now, so I will be doing that as well. This would normally be the final episode of the season, but because of the pandemic shutdown, I've decided to continue offering new episodes throughout the summer for your entertainment while you are self-isolating. So next week begins Season 3. Stay tuned. Our guest today has run numerous comic book stores, including Little Shop of Heroes, Comic Collector Shop, and currently Heroes and Champions. He's also a master at foosball. Here he is, Phil Schlaefer. Okay, on the phone today, I have Phil Schlaefer. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am fine, too. Well, you're my second podcast guest since this COVID outbreak, the first being Archie Comics' Dan Parent. And I was wondering how you were surviving during all this time with your comic book stores and everything.
Well, that's a good question. Every day has been a new curveball since this started a few weeks back. The most recent curveball is Diamond announcing they're not going to do any deliveries after this week. So that's going to be interesting. Orders are on hold for a while. Today is the due date for the order book for future orders. So we'll see when those ever get here. So we've been making decisions and trying to get ahead of this on the fly. But overall, you know, we're in the same boat as everybody else. But the store is doing okay. We offer curbside service. People can call ahead of time. We can run their card or do PayPal or some such. They can come by and grab it. But we're not really letting people, in fact, we're not letting people into the store and able to browse and hang out. So that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then right after And the Diamond announcement came a couple of days after Alan and I purchased Lee Hester's, Lee's Comics, subscription list and mailing list, fixtures and inventory that was in the store. So, again, that was a big curveball for us. We weren't expecting some of that. But the new customers from Lee are doing well. They're coming over. And my regular customers are getting used to this type of thing. So we're all in the same boat again and trying to get used to it. But we're going to take this time to remodel the store completely. We like a lot of the fixtures that were in Lee's Comics, so we're going to make use of some of those, clean up and repaint some things. And we feel that when this blows over at some point, we reopen, we'll be stronger than ever and more versatile for everybody.
And hasn't the store changed the name? The last time I was down there was Comic Collector Shop, so haven't you undergone quite a different change since I've been there?
Yeah, that store has changed a few times over the years, as most stores have. I mean, I started my first store in 1985, and it was called Little Shop of Heroes. And then I shortened it to just Heroes a few years later. So it's kind of weird to look back. I have been involved in 6 or 7, maybe 8 store purchases of some sort. So way back in the day, I started my store from scratch. And then a couple of years later, I bought one of the comics and fantasies stores from Roger Grant, who's no longer around. And then there was another store I bought. The mailing was, I can't even remember. I think it was Collector's Corner, something like that. And then moved the store, sold the store. Years later, bought Big Guys Comics in Mountain View. That's the one that I changed the name to Comic Collector Shop.
Okay.
Comic Collector Shop's a homage to the original Bob Sidebottom's Comic Collector Shop. That was downtown San Jose since the late 60s. And then some years after that, R&K Comics was in Sunnyvale. Purchased them, merged the 2 stores together, took the Mountain View location, moved it to the R&K Sunnyvale location, kept the name Comic Collector Shop. And then a few years back, I think 5 or 6 years ago, I actually sold out to Joseph Levine. And then in the summer, Joseph sold it back to me.
I didn't know
and
that.
We still had the name Comic Collector Shop. And then Alan Bart of Heroes, which I had sold back to him back in 1995, he became involved in the store. So we're 50-50 owners in this store, and we decided to combine the tried and true names, Heroes, which was his from me, and then my back issue convention name, which is Champion Comics. So the new store is Heroes and Champions.
Okay.
So people are familiar with both of those names, and they're familiar that Alan Barr and myself have those names. So that it was a bit of a change, but not a full change. People know who we are. We've been around for years and years and years. So, and then Lee of Lee's Comics is going to keep his name for his online, and I guess he's going to do conventions and things. So,
right.
Anyway, yeah. So I've been involved in quite a few comic store changes and moves and whatnot. So this is the latest one, and by far the strangest with the the COVID and sequestering and all that kind of stuff. So
now, is it still at the same location, the last one you had?
Yeah, this is still at 574 East El Camino.
Okay.
Cross Street is Fair Oaks. We're in Sunnyvale. We didn't move it. It's the same store. And then the stuff that we've gotten from Lee's Comics, we're just merging it into the same store in Sunnyvale. So longtime Lee's customers will recognize some of the bookcases and fixtures and things. But the store is still Heroes and Champions, same location.
Got it. And then does Alan have the other Heroes location in Campbell, or is that one closed?
No, that store is still open. That's at the corner of Campbell Avenue and Winchester Boulevard. Okay. I sold that store to Alan back in 1995, and it's still there and still operating. So what's nice is I can lean on that store to get some inventory here and there, or vice versa. So we trade back and forth. But he owns that store outright.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And again, we're both involved in the store here.
Now, going way back, how did you get involved in collecting comic books and becoming a comic store owner in the first place? I mean, it's not something you just really wake up one morning and say, I'm going to do as a career necessarily, but...
Right. Well, I've been lucky, but it wasn't planned. I used to sell comics at the Prospect Flea Market and the De Anza Flea Market back in high school once in a while.
Okay.
I was a collector since I was about 9 years old. And, over time you get doubles and things. And I went out to the flea market and sold off some doubles. And it was just for extra few bucks. I didn't have a paper route, so I did that until I could get a regular job at 16. So it was for, gas money and goofing around on the weekends. And then I was going to go to school for graphic design, art, drafting, that type of thing. I'd been going that direction. In second year in school, I stopped, took a break, got a job in construction, and a few years of that, the arcade in Campbell that we used to hang out at, that was at Bud Avenue in Winchester. Mm-hmm. That guy approached me out of the blue and said, hey, I want to sell the arcade and move to Reno. Are you interested? So I was 23 at the time, and I said, yeah. So I went for it. And about a month or two in, I decided to put a little sign behind the counter that said, buying old comics and sports cards. Just, kind of for my collection. I didn't mean for it to be a full business. So I put this sign up at the arcade. Of course, lots of guys that went in there were collectors or had collections when they were younger. So books started coming in, items did. And then people started encouraging me to carry new comics. So little by little, this arcade that had 55, 60 games in it, I started shrinking the games. I started selling off some games and bringing in another little glass counter or a display rack for more and more comics. And then eventually it was about 50-50. I was down about 25 games, and the other half of the store was collectibles and comics and things. And then in 1990, I moved it to the corner of Campbell and Winchester, where it is now. And in 95, I sold it to Alan and thought I was going to be out of it for a while. And I just dealt in original comic artwork and some comics on the side. And then a few years of that went by, and I got to talking to Dick Swan of Big Guys Comics, and he wanted to sell, and we ended up working a deal. And so I didn't plan it. It just kind of fell into my lap. And I've seen the ups and downs, right? And all the stores open and close over the years, and a lot of guys I've known. And I'm still around, so.
I think the first time I met you was Little Shop of Heroes, and it was that considered Cupertino?
Well, yeah. So there's the store I bought from Comics and Fantasies was in Cupertino.
Right.
That was Roger Grant, and it used to be on Bark Lane. It was a tiny little thing.
Yeah, I used to go to that one. Yeah,
Roger and I got to talking, and he had found a place to move it down the street across from the Kmart.
Yeah.
And that's when him and I got to talking, and I said, hey, I want to buy this store out. And Roger had 2 or 3 other stores at the time, so we made a deal. I bought the store right when he was moving it, took over this new lease over off of Bollinger and De Anza. That's right. And ran that store for a while.
Yeah.
Then I ended up selling that. So I had that store and the Campbell store at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And I sold it to a guy named Craig Blackwell.
Yeah.
He ran it for a few years and then ended up having to close it in 94, 95 when the industry was shaky.
Oh, okay.
And then I ended up selling the Campbell store to Alan in 95. So,
got it. Okay.
So yeah, that was one of the stores, and that's where I met you. That's right.
Yeah.
Way back.
Then I moved to San Francisco in the early 90s actually late 80s to go to college and everything, so I didn't know all that later changes and everything because I was up there buying comics and stuff like that. So.
Well, there was all kinds of stuff going on. You know, the ironic thing was when I was a junior in high school, I worked for Roger Grant at the first comics and fantasy store way down on West San Carlos.
Now, I remember that, too. I mean, the earliest I went there was like 1977. So did you work there way back when?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay. So I probably saw you there and didn't know.
Probably. So I was at that store for a few months, and then he opened his second store in Princeton Plaza on Blossom Hill, and myself and Greg Sisk went there and repainted it, put the glass counters in there and got it ready. And then I worked mainly at that store for probably another 6-8 months.
Okay.
And I ended up leaving there, and then, you know, a few years later I ended up, you know, opening a store from the arcade. So, you know, I'd been around. I went to Side Bottoms for years when I was a kid. I used to go to Brian's Books. I used to go to Red Planet Comics. Dean Parker was in El Paseo.
Yeah.
Comic Scene with Dennis Daggs.
I remember that.
You know, I was all over the place, as were you. You know, Roger Grant stores. And then I'd venture out of the area every once in a while. I would get up to Comics and Comics or Comics Relief in Berkeley. Once in a great while, I'd run up to San Francisco. But so, you know, I've seen the majority of all these stores open, and some of them close, of course. But I think the first time I was downtown at Side Bottoms, Comic Collector Shop was probably 74, 75, something like that. I was 12 or 13, talked my mom into driving me down there. So most of us remember that store, right? That was the big deal. Then the Comic Art Shop, which was one of the Comics and Comics guys' stores, was down there for a little while. There was another store called the Marvel Galaxy. Frank Scadina had that. Those days were really cool because you could go downtown and hit 5 or 6 places within 2 blocks of each other to get comics, right? You could go to the couple of comic stores. You could go to Twice Read Books. You could go to Recycled Books. All those stores down there had comics in boxes and dig around and find stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Now, did you have the same issues that I did? You're, I think, a couple years older than me, so maybe not. Like, downtown San Jose back then in the mid-'70s was kind of shady.
Yeah, that was a real sketchy neighborhood.
And so my mom said, we can go to that store, but you have to hold my hand. And I'm like 10 years old, and I'm like, hold your hand. But I did it because, you know, there's like drunks and derelicts and everything else around in that area. And it was pretty weird, you know.
Yeah, that was a really rough area. My mom took me once. She was scared to death, so that was that. But what happened was I met a couple of guys in junior high, and we would ride our bikes from Campbell all the way down to downtown San Jose. We'd start early in the morning, lock them up out front of Bob's at one of the parking meters, and then go in there and spend all day shopping at all the little shops. Of course, we all had $2 or $3 between us, but comics were 20 cents, 25 cents in those days. So, but that's what we did, and I didn't tell my mom I was going down there because, she would have had a conniption fit. So we rode down there, didn't tell our parents, and was doing that for a while. Then finally I got a car and I could drive down there. But it was definitely a scary place. We did not walk around too much. We ran from store to store and stayed out of the way of the weirdos.
Now, did you have the same issues with Side Bottom that seemingly everybody else did? Is like you dig through and find some good old back issue, and it was like priced like something low, and he says, "Oh no, it's not that price. It's this much higher price." Did you have that same issue? It seemed like everybody.
Yeah, Bob was the master of that. He would just put piles out on these little makeshift shelves and things, and then he'd basically let you do the work, right? You'd sift through, find the good ones, bring them to the counter, and he'd go, "Oh, no, that one shouldn't be in that stack. That's $5. That's $2."
Right.
So he didn't have to do the extra work, and then he'd just turn you down. He didn't like kids.
Right.
It was hard to deal with. And he would run us out of there all the time, and especially if he thought you were out of money. But there was one time in particular, he had, Bob always had really great stuff behind the counter there on display,
right.
And he'd have multiples. So there was this time I was down there. I was probably 13, 14, and there was Iron Man #1 there, right? He wanted $4 or $5 for it, and I didn't have that much money, so I scrapped and saved. A month or two goes by, we ride down there again, and I say, hey, I want to buy one of those Iron Man #1s. Well, now there aren't any on display on the counter, right? But he's got them in the back room, or he's got them somewhere.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and says, I don't feel like getting one. It's in the back. And I'm like, what? I saved up my money but Bob didn't care. He knew eventually I would spend that money on something else in there, which I did. And I never did get the Iron Man 1 from him, but he was
That's funny.
He was grouchy. He was into his jazz and whatever else, and if you couldn't talk jazz with him or old comics, he didn't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
But eventually, over the years, I wore him down, kept going in there, got to be friendly with him, and then would hang out there on Friday nights. I played in the backroom poker games and all that kind of stuff in my 20s and early 30s. So that was fun, but it took a while, to wear him down to where he would let me hang around. So.
Right. I don't think I had the probably the gumption or the guts back then to try to befriend him. I just remember he was always kind of there in a grouch, and then he opened a Monterey store at one point, and I go, oh no, he's here too.
Yeah, no, he did that. I don't know how long he had that store. Only a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the cool thing with that was because he had the jazz record stuff down there too.
Yeah.
He befriended Clint Eastwood, who was a big jazz aficionado. So Clint would go in there and hang out with Bob, and they'd listen to jazz records. Bob would shut the door and not let anybody in. And one time I walked into the downtown San Jose store, and there's Clint standing there, right?
Wow.
I'm like 16, 17 years old, and Bob shooed me out of there and locked the door, and they went whatever in the back and were listening to the jazz stuff. So that was pretty cool, but if you weren't his buddy, yeah, you were out of luck.
All right. Now, his business card always had the R. Crumb drawing that says, I want it, hot stuff.
Yes.
Was he friends with R. Crumb, or was it just...
Yes, he was.
Oh, okay.
He befriended Crumb way early on.
Okay.
And Bob was a huge fan of the underground stuff and bought tons of it. So those guys really liked Bob because he spent a lot of money pumping them up. And then, of course, Bob made a couple of his own undergrounds, Barbarian Women and something else, I think. But
yeah, that's right.
So Crumb did a lot of stuff for him. There's a card that is jazz records, instead of comics, and it says the exact same thing,
right.
But it's records in its place. So he did one of those, and then Crumb did some plywood stand-ups. These things are 5 or 6 feet high. Actually, 4 to 5 feet high. And he did the Alligator Girl and the Keep on Trucking guy, a couple of guys that he cut out of plywood and painted. And Bob had those.
Yeah.
And Bob had one of them in the window, and then he'd keep it in the back. So after he passed away, his wife sold those. But yeah, those were a very cool, one-of-a-kind thing that Crumb did for him. So they were pals for a while.
Okay, so those are real. I remember those. I didn't know if he actually...
Those were real.
Oh.
Yep.
So you didn't have any part of that when you got his collection then? I mean, or was that just something you didn't bother to purchase?
Well, first off, there's kind of a combination there, got his collection. So for years, Bob started to sell me stuff when I had my store. He would sell me stuff wholesale, stacks of things here and there. And then when he started having health problems, I helped out with his ordering and helping to run the store a little bit because he wasn't in there. because his wife had no clue on what to do. So I helped out for a while, and then he got better, and we were still making deals. I was buying a lot of stuff, and then when he passed away, his wife was going to sell it to me, and then she had a change of heart and decided she wanted to run the store in Bob's memory. And I taught her for a while, the first few months, on how to order and, cycle and pay attention to what's going on. But, then she went and did her own thing. She took some of the money and did another issue of Barbarian Women. I think it was number 3. But got herself behind, and the landlord was never really fond of the store there, so he was really a jackass to Bob and to Liz, and he had no patience. So eventually Liz had to close the store, and at that point I wasn't buying much from her and was in negotiation to talk to Alan about buying my store, and then put them together, and then Alan bought the rest of Bob's inventory and that type of thing. So I got a fair amount over some years, but the bulk at the end there, Alan got.
Oh, okay. Now, I think at some point you showed me the original store sign in Sunnyvale. How did you acquire that? Was that with the...
Yeah, when the store was closing down, that's the store sign that was made out of wood, and it's green with gold lettering, and it was on the back wall of Bob's store. So I kept that, took that home. The original sign that was out front, the neon and everything, I wish I'd have paid more attention to that, could have snagged it. The landlord, I think, tore it down and threw it away. So that's really sucky. I always wanted that. But I have the original in-store sign. It's probably, 15 feet wide. It's a couple of pieces of wood. It's like 10 inches by 1 inch with the Comic Collector Shop logo still painted on it. And that's on display still in our Heroes and Champions store in Sunnyvale. So,
And, you have all these stories about this store. How about any of the other stores that were downtown? Did you get as chummy with them, or was it kind of just with Bob?
No, I mean, again, it was years before, Bob was nice to me. I was probably 19, 20 years old by that time. So when I was younger, those stores didn't last down there that long. So the Marvel Galaxy store, I remember maybe being in there a couple of times. And Frank Scadina, who ran that store, that guy could rival Bob for grouchiness. He might have been worse. So that guy was a piece of work. And then the other store, Dick Swan was in there, and a couple of his guys, and they were nicer. They had pinballs in there, I remember, and they had a little Star Trek part of the room. They called it Starbase One, I think, or something. But again, they didn't stay down there very long either. A year or two, maybe, not that long. So, I would, before I had a car, I could get down there on my bike, but that was, once every other month or so, we'd scrap and save and get down there. So, so I did not really get to make friends with those guys in those days. Years later, I got to be friends with Dick and some of the guys in that first store, and then Frank Scadina would come around my Campbell store and complain and be a little grouchy and stuff. But he would come in from time to time, and then eventually we stopped seeing him.
Okay. Now that store that Dick Swan was involved in downtown, was that one Comics and Comics also, or was it?
Well, it was called the Comic Art Shop.
Okay.
But they did not call it Comics and Comics.
Okay.
So Dick could probably give you more the exact details of that store, but he was involved in the store. I think Bud Plant was too.
Okay.
But that wasn't the full Comics and Comics thing yet, and it was never called Comics and Comics.
Okay. Because I remember Comics and Comics when it was on Cowper in Palo Alto, that one.
Yeah.
And one in Berkeley and a couple others, but
they had Berkeley, they had San Francisco, and they had 5 or 6 stores at one time.
That's right. There's like 3 in San Francisco, I think, at one point.
but yeah, I was, I'm probably 10, 12 years younger than those guys on average, so I really wasn't in with them yet.
And then there's another one called Seven Sons. I mean, I always hear about that. I don't think I ever saw that one. Is that similar to, or is that Robert Beerbaum's one, or?
That's part of the same group.
Oh, okay, got it.
They did an offshoot, so they called it the Seven Sons, but I'm not sure. My memory's failing on that. If they actually called the store the Seven Sons, or it was the Seven Sons, they called themselves that as maybe like a little corporation or something that owned the store.
Okay.
And then branched off for the Comets and Comics. So those fine details, I don't know.
I'll probably have to do a podcast with Dick Swan. So.
Yes, you do.
Yes. Let's see. Now, when you were doing, when you were selling some of the stores, you acted like you got out of the business completely, or did you just not sell in a store and you were still collecting?
Well, I mean, I'd done that kind of a couple times. In '95, I sold the store, and I was married at the time. My in-laws used to own a lot of restaurants, and I thought I was going to go into the restaurant business and do that.
Oh, wow.
That didn't work. Yeah, that didn't work out very quickly. But I had sold the store, and there weren't many opportunities, and I didn't think that opening a store from scratch was the way to go. So I didn't think I was going to get back into it, and then a few years went by, and started talking to Dick Swan, and then that kind of got me back in.
Okay.
I'd had opportunities, Brian's Books, and had 3 stores at one time, and he'd offered one of the stores to me, and but I wasn't sure I wanted to dive back in, and then finally, after some discussions with Dick for 4 or 5 months, I decided I missed it, and I wanted to have a storefront again, and not just set up at a convention or that type of thing.
Yeah, that's one I was going to ask. Were you still doing conventions at that time?
Once in a while,
okay.
not super regular. I was more of a buyer, and again, I was dealing in a lot of original artwork, so it was a lot of mail order and those types of things. I wasn't doing as many comics. I just kind of left my collection as it was, and was really into the art. So.
What type of art were you collecting? Just the same, like Marvel art, or is it everything?
I had a little of everything, but I focused on Marvel art.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite artists from the 70s when I was, buying the stuff off the rack. So I had a lot of P. Craig Russell. I had Galassi. I had some Wrightson. I had Frank Brunner, and I had a ton of Starlin art. I probably had over 300 pages of Jim Starlin art.
Wow.
Even guys like Rich Buckler and some of that. And so I had quite a bit of that stuff. And then I'd have a Neil Adams page once in a while, or a Steranko or something. But I would, I traded a lot of stuff, and I kept 3 or 4 of those 70s guys the most. I had some Kirby stuff, and the stuff you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky. At least for me, I got into that in the mid-late 80s, so I got some good deals and had this stuff for a while. And I didn't think I was going to get back into the stores.
Right.
I was happy just to do the artwork and other things, but things switched and I went back.
Right. Do you deal with original art now, or do you just have personal pieces that you like, or nothing?
Yeah, I have personal pieces. I sell a few things every once in a while. I don't have near what I used to have, but I dabble in it a little bit. It's hard to go completely cold turkey on this stuff, right? You go back and you buy some old Timelies or ECs or just stuff, but over all these years, for me, it's been 40-something years of collecting and or selling. I've had pretty much everything at one time or another. I had a large Timely collection, and I sold it. I had a large EC collection, and I sold them, and Hero Monster. You go into these little phases,
right? And
a lot of stuff I still have, but my my store is kind of my revolving collection.
Right. Yeah. In talking to Lee, the only thing he had, and I think he finally sold those too, is he had a personal Steranko collection, and I think he finally sold that and said, I don't have any personal collection.
Well, he may end up rebuying some of that. That's usually what happens, right? Because now,
excuse me,
he doesn't feel like he needs to sell it through the store, right? He can keep some things. So that's typically what happens.
Yeah.
A lot of guys have done that. Some guys just keep on collecting and never sell some of that stuff. But it's still fun, and it's still cool to talk about a lot of that kind of thing. So.
And I was just curious, I know certain things you've collected over the years because you mentioned, I think you went through a phase where you're collecting a bunch of romance comics and things like that.
Well, I was trying to complete the Marvel romance.
Right.
So my thing was every Marvel comic from 1961 to like 1985, I was trying to get. So that included the Western stuff, Sergeant Fury, Night Nurse, you name it, any title, Marvel's Greatest Comics, Marvel Tales, the reprints, I wanted one of everything. And I was probably 99% complete. I was just missing one or two of the Our Love stories and a My Love, but I'd had everything else.
Wow.
So, and then, after a while, I'm like, okay, well, I'll sell off some of that. I still have probably 85% of that.
Oh, okay.
So I have a pretty full Marvel collection, scattered after 1985. There's certain runs and stories I've kept, but it takes up a lot of space, and some of that I've gotten in book form trades and stuff. So after 1985.
Of those type of titles and stuff like that, what is probably the most difficult one to collect? Meaning hardest to find?
The hardest to complete would be those romance books, especially if you want them in nice condition. Those didn't get saved a lot in collections, and I'm sure a lot of boys didn't buy a lot of those, right? Some did, but most of the time they didn't buy them much. Depending condition, if you're looking for high grade stuff, of course, there's lots of books that are tough to find in high grade. But if you just want nice medium grade or BG copies of stuff, you can pretty much get everything. But those would be the toughest, those romance books, I think.
Right.
And a handful of the Westerns.
Yeah.
For Marvel.
Right. Now, did you collect anything else? I know, typically you're a Marvel guy from what I've known, but I mean, were you into DC and all the other publishers, or?
Yeah, I had a little of everything. I was an artist guy, right? So I'd get all the Tower comics, Wally Wood, all of that stuff. I had a bunch of DC stuff, all the Kirby stuff, Wrights and Neil Adams. The top artist guys. I had the Atlas Seaboard comics when those came out when I was 10 years old, or whatever old I was. And some runs of DC, right? Swamp Thing, of course, but I was not a mainstream DC guy. I never really got Actions and Supermans or Jimmy Olsen's or any of that. It's mostly artist-driven for DC titles.
Okay.
For a long time. What I do have still is a very comprehensive collection of the Marvel Mania, Mary Marvel Marching Society, FOOM, that kind of thing. I have a lot of that stuff. Store displays, pop-up displays, things like that. The things that are super, super rare, that you couldn't just buy those at any drugstore.
Right.
You have to send away for them, and or know somebody that had a store and get the display things. So I've been lucky to find a lot of cool things like that that you don't see every day.
Were you a subscriber to FOOM or anything like that back in the day, or no?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after I think it was issue 2 or 3, I got a subscription. And I got the subscription all the way through, and the first, they weren't mailing the FOOMs folded like the comics. They were shipping them like a magazine flat. And then I had subscriptions to comics early on too, right? I had a subscription to Avengers and Iron Man and maybe Thor, they come folded in half. You're like,
Okay.
what?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, did they fold those? Yeah, I never had a comic book subscription, so.
Yeah, they folded those, so that was irritating, and then I ended up going out and buying a regular copy, so the subscription really didn't do me much good. And I don't think you got them before the stores did. I can't remember. I think you got them a few days later or a week later, so that was frustrating, too. You'd go to the rack.
Wow. And
you'd see the issue, like, oh, I don't have that yet. So I'm pretty sure it was back. It was that way, but maybe I'm wrong. But so I only did like one, year subscription of those. When I figured out they folded them, I stopped that.
Now, FOOM, they never sold that on the stands. It was only by mail order, right?
Right. You had to join the FOOM club, right? You'd get your membership packet. There was some decals and some iron-ons and the fold-out Steranko poster and the big envelope with the Hulk face on it. Okay. And then after that, I think it was only the first half a dozen issues, they still had the Hulk mailing envelope, and then the books would just come by themselves, like, say, a Sports Illustrated with the mailing stamp on them.
Okay.
So,
because I tended to see all those after the fact. I mean, I guess like when they were out, I'd see the ads in the comic books, but it didn't occur to me to actually mail away for them. So, and then a few years later, they'd pop up in stores in the back issue bins and stuff, and I'd get a few that way.
Yeah, that's the stuff that I've really been after the last few years. Is the stuff that you had to mail in for, because most people didn't do that. And maybe they didn't want to cut the coupon out of the comic or whatever the reason. So that stuff's kind of hard to find, some of that. Right. So I'm trying to complete that. So
yeah. I do have a few little knick-knack doodads like that, like the Howard the Duck button, for when he ran for president in 76. And I actually have a Pizzazz magazine bookmark, which is apparently rarer than hen's teeth. I didn't even realize it. So it's a little cardboard thing. It's not much, but it says Pizzazz on it. So anyway.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm not sure I have one of those.
Yeah. And I've seen the Marvel No Prize envelope. Have you had those and stuff in your collection?
I have about 3 or 4 of them. I've got a couple blank ones, and then I have a couple that I had Stan Lee sign.
What do you think is like the rarest thing you might have?
The rarest thing I might have
of Marvel collectibles.
That's a good question. There's probably a lot of things tied, but I have an original script for FF 106 or 108, signed by Stan Lee. So it was the script outline from the writer to the artist, Stan. So I have that. I have the original display poster for the Third Eye Blacklight. So it shows all 24 on it. I have the box art, things like that. I've got original 7-Eleven Slurpee cup displays, right? So there's a 3x3 cardboard sign that they used to stick up in the store above.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that.
Icy machine. So I have that. I have a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the single most rare, I mean, that script is probably one of a kind. I have a lot of things autographed by Kirby and Stan Lee, but the item itself, it'd have to be one of those type of deals, I guess.
Right. Now, tell me about the script, just out of curiosity. I mean, what typically happens to those? Are they just discarded, or are they returned, or are they kept in the Marvel files? Or?
So I guess some of them get thrown away. Maybe Stan or somebody or Marie Severance saved a few in file drawers. But for the most part, I don't think they kept those after they made the issue. Maybe the artist did, or an inker or somebody would, but I've not seen too many of those.
Right. I haven't seen any for any publisher, really, so that's why I was curious about it.
Well, if you go back through like Jack Kirby Collector or Back Issue Magazine, those kind of things, you'll see pictures or copies of, a script outline that somebody submitted, right? Say Stan Lee did, or Roy Thomas or some such. So they're out there. But this one's complete. I got it from a local collector, and it's signed by Stan, so that's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. A few years ago, since you mentioned Stan Lee and his autograph, you got him into the store, and I was there. What other guests have you had at any of your various stores over the years that you're proud of?
Well, obviously Stan was the big one.
Right.
Years ago, I had some artists come in the 90s, but I didn't push that too hard. You know, the first couple of guys I ever had was Mick Gray and Chris Marinin, I think. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I talked to a lot of guys and just didn't pull the trigger to really push that too hard. And then years later, I decided, okay, let's look and see what we can do. And, you know, I'd run into Stan many times over the years at shows, and I really wasn't pals with him, but, you know, could carry on a conversation. He'd recognize me. So ultimately, before he got super, super huge for the signings, I was able to get him to come to my store. And up to that point, Stan hadn't done any store signings, maybe ever.
Wow.
It was only a convention or something special. He would come, but he had not really gone to anybody's store. Possibly something in L.A. or in you know, New York way back 30, 40, 50 years ago. But he was not normally doing that type of thing. So I was in the right place at the right time and pulled off a coup there and got him into the store. So that was a huge success, of course. And then Stan wanted to come back the following year. Mm-hmm. So we had set up everything to do that. And then the weekend he was slated to come, that week he had surgery for a pacemaker.
Oh.
So then we tried to reschedule, and once people realized, hey, you know, Stan's not that young anymore and he's getting fragile, they started throwing big money at him to show up at these super large events, and we could just never coordinate to get him back.
Oh, I always wondered about that.
Yeah, he was booked solid, and a couple of times his manager would call me, like, you know, on a Wednesday and say, hey, he can come this Saturday, we'll fly him up. And I said, hey, I that doesn't give me enough time to let the customers know he's coming, right? It would probably be worse, right, if people realized he showed up again and they weren't ready. So we just couldn't get it coordinated again. And then they got more and more selective as Stan got more and more popular, and it's such a hot commodity that was pretty much impossible to get him to come back at that point. So
okay. Now, were you talking directly with Stan to set it up, or he always had a manager at that point?
Initially, I set it up with Stan, and then the details after that went to this guy, Max, who was his handler. But that was really early on, because Stan didn't have anybody really, you know, being the middleman booking certain things, right? It was pretty simple. He would just show up at a handful of the big shows every year, and he didn't really need that. But it was right about that time this guy started helping him. But the initial discussion was Stan and myself, and we worked out most of that. And then the fine tuning, Max got involved, right, with the actual date and how many hours and that type of thing. So we flew him up and got him a limo and did the whole 9 yards, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, at the time, I thought it was pretty unique. I didn't realize how truly unique it was. You know. After that, you know, like I said, he was in huge demand. The Marvel movies really started to take off. Right.
And when he had that, you know, pacemaker put in, everybody realized, man, we better get him. So then, of course, his price went way up to get him to come out.
And even the price to get his autograph, I mean, at your store was $50. And I think the last big wow was like $200 or something for a sign.
Actually, ours was lower than that. It was $35, and we gave you a T-shirt.
That's right. I did get a T-shirt. Was it $35?
You got a Comic Collector Shop T-shirt.
I do have one.
Of Stan,
yes.
And it was $35 to get both. And you know, because, again, it was a reasonable price to get him there at the time. But then just before he passed away, his signatures were, $130, $150 bucks.
That's right. You are correcting me. It was $35 because I did see the reason why I paid $50. That was the second time I saw Stan for a signature. It was at a show. It was at a show, and he was at 50, and I go, 50? He was. That's right. And then he went up to 200, and I was like, oh boy, But
I guess they really, whoever was his handler, and Stan was out of that daily stuff. He didn't really pay attention and know what was going on with some of that. Yeah. These guys were just really jacking up the rates. But we did it for $35, and we gave everybody a T-shirt.
Right.
With our store logo on it. So we had 600 tickets that we sold. Mm-hmm. And, again, that was, our main thing was obviously we wanted to stand there, but we wanted it to be affordable for our good regular customers and other Bay Area people to everybody get a fair chance. Once that money starts getting up there, then it's a tougher deal.
Right. And I remember that on the Big Wow. It was like, when he was a couple hundred and stuff like that, or, even 100, people are like, I don't want to pay this much, but I got to do it. It's like,
that was at the, I think that was the Silicon Valley show, right?
I think it probably was. Yeah, once they switched it over to the Silicon
they bought
Valley
out
show.
the
That's
Big
right.
Wow.
That's right.
And then the next, when they got Stan to come, the price was huge.
Yeah, and then Woz would do everyone a favor and drive around that little golf cart or whatever with Stan, and everybody'd wave and all that stuff. So, but I mean, you can't even get close. You couldn't even get close to him by that point. He was like royalty. It's like,
I mean, he deserves it. All those 80 plus years in the business, and so that was a pretty cool thing.
Right. I always like to tell people is like when I first met Stan, it was in San Diego, and it just happened to be, he was sitting there with putting some stuff in a briefcase, and nobody was around. It was behind some drapes, and so I just started talking to him. I talked to him for about a half hour. And then one of his handlers back then, Mr. Lee, you're needed for a panel, and that ended that. And he's all, well, see you later, And it's like I tell people that, and they go, yeah, he used to be approachable when he was younger,
Well, all the creators were. Yeah. And, that's how I got to know him a little bit. I would see him at San Diego Con or somewhere and stop him in the middle of the aisle or see him in the hotel lobby, and he was always gracious and had time for everybody. And really the only guy he would be there with was his lawyer,
right,
who would kind of like walk around with him and stuff, just more of a companion, really.
Yeah, so that must be
he would do the panels. So I gotten a lot of things signed back then and pictures and that type of thing, but he was just a really cool guy. And again, most of the creators, you could go to Jack Kirby, who'd be walking around. Frank Frazetta would walk around the show once in a while. He'd be there. And a lot of those great creators, they were just happy for the attention, right? Because being an artist or a writer is a lonely profession. You're home or in your studio by yourself most of the time,
right,
doing that. So that was something really new when comic fandom started getting going in the 60s. These guys were turning into mini celebrities, and that was unheard of before that, right? Nobody even a lot of times knew what these guys looked like. So many were gracious, and their wives and family members would be there with them, and most everybody was really cool.
Right. Just curious, what show you first attended, either as a fan or as a dealer?
First show, that had to be like Baycon or something way back.
Yeah.
Then there was something called Americon. I think Dan Vado might have run that. Mm-hmm. Those were local ones in this area. But the Baycon, I think, that was before WonderCon and that.
Right.
I went to one of those, and then there were smaller things would pop up here and there. But that's the one I remember. Mm-hmm. The first San Diego I went to I went one time in the early 80s, 84, I think, before I had the store. And I didn't go back again for another couple of years. And then it was 4 or 5 times. And then eventually it was every year. So.
Okay. I forgot. Did you used to set up down there? I know Lee did for.
I didn't set up there an actual booth until trying to think. When I went in the 80s, I didn't set up, but it was once or twice in the early 90s. I know I did in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
95, 96. And then when I came back, then it was a regular setup.
Okay. And I guess you stopped going like a lot of number of people. It's the prices have gotten kind of insane going down there and stuff like that.
Well,
or do you still set up down there?
No. I still go every year.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you'd stopped.
No. I remember Lee stopped.
Yes.
And a lot of big names over the years. Mile High doesn't go anymore.
Okay.
Bud Plant, I don't think, is going. I'm not sure about that, but maybe Bud's still going. But no, I've got my spot right there in the front.
Oh, okay. All right.
At the B entrance, and I'm right across from Heritage and CGC.
Okay, so you are
right on the front wall. Yeah, so I have been there many, many years in a row.
Okay. Now, are you also? I know it's been postponed. Exhibiting at WonderCon too, or no?
Well, that's been postponed. I'm not sure they're going to set up a new date. But yeah, I was supposed to be at and Alan as well. Mm-hmm. We were supposed to be at WonderCon. We were supposed to be at Emerald City last few weeks back. They canceled that. Mm-hmm. The other one was Ontario. Comic Revolution. That one's been postponed. I'm normally in Phoenix in the end of May. I go to Vegas in June, Comic-Con in July, Wizard, Chicago in August, the Silicon Valley show, if and when they're redoing that. I guess it's getting rebooted again. Mm-hmm. So once comic convention season starts, I'm at least one a month for 8 or 9 months in a row.
Now, it sounds like, except for Chicago, they're mainly on the West Coast. Is that correct?
Yeah, I go to Phoenix, I go to Vegas, Seattle, Portland, that type of thing. I have been across, I go to the New York show every other year or so.
Oh,
I've been to New Orleans, Chicago a bunch of times. So I've been around to some others. Mm-hmm. I usually set up at more of the West Coast ones, yes.
Okay. I was going to say, have you set up in New York before, or how does that work?
No, I'm more of an attendee there.
Okay.
I get a dealer badge from one of my buddies. I usually help them out, and that when I go and do shopping and cruise around. I've done that in New Orleans and some others. In Chicago, I've set up there many times. Mm-hmm. But usually the ones that are a little closer, it's difficult to get your boxes cross country these days. So,
how do you do it for Chicago? Do you drive or do you ship it or what?
Usually it'll get shipped somehow. There's another dealer or two, and we'll go in on a big truck and get all the stuff driven back. I actually been set up in Baltimore one year. Now that I think of it, Alan and I did the Wizard Chicago, and then the following week was Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So we did those back to back one time, and those I drove. That was a one-time shot. Go across country and did that. So I'm not in a hurry to do that again.
Right. I went across country in the late 90s, and it's fun to do once. I don't know about all the time. It's like, because it takes about a week to get across country. Yeah.
But it's cool to see collectors and dealers from different parts of the country. There's some you just won't see unless you get out there. So
Right. And are there different, I'm sure there are different artists and writers and things that attend shows back there that don't come out here? Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially the older ones, like Ramita doesn't travel anymore, Joe Sinnott. Mm-hmm. Some of the guys get older, they're going to stick closer to home. And I'm sure there's just a handful that just don't really want to travel cross country. So...
Okay. Well, barring any sort of more seriousness, hopefully there isn't going to be, and this will soon pass in a few months, maybe. What do you see as the future for your new store, I guess, and Heroes and Champions, and for shows after this is all over?
Well, we'll continue. Alan Barr and myself, we do a lot of shows together, and we do some shows separate, but we'll continue to do the convention circuit once those start getting back online. And we're very confident that the store is going to be very strong when we reopen it and this passes. I mean, we've put a lot of time and effort into the remodeling right now and upgrading inventory and so forth. We've got a ton of nice Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age comics for those collectors. The store also does gaming, heavy duty into Magic, The Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, that kind of stuff. We have a very, very large and revamped trade paperback selection. Our original inventory combined with the Lee's comics inventory is huge now.
Right.
So we're doing expansion to accommodate that. And I think part of this is going to sharpen us up with better mail order service, that type of thing. Because I think some collectors now are going to get used to having their books mailed to them. They might like that.
Right.
So we'll continue any of those type of programs. But I think overall, when this blows over, we're going to be in a much stronger position.
Very cool. So, for the meantime, what's the best way somebody can get in contact to you for mail order or anything like that?
Well, you can contact the store number directly. That number is 408-732-8775. You can see us on Facebook, Heroes and Champions. We're also on Instagram. And you can email the store. There's a couple different email addresses. I'll give you the old one, the comic.collectorshop@me.com is still active. We've wanted to keep that going for a little while. And again, we're doing the curbside pickup. We're doing the mail order for this type of thing. And that seems to be working pretty smoothly. Those are the best ways to go forward with that now. And
do you also have an eBay store or no?
Yeah, the eBay store is under, let's see here. That's good, because I'm getting it confused with my eBay store. My eBay store is Champion Comics. And then we got Heroes Comics, has his own eBay store as well. And the store one is called CCS1-Comics. That was short for Comic Collector Shop. So it's CCS1-Comics is the store's eBay store.
All right.
And we're listing stuff there. We're listing stuff on TCG Player. That's gaming stuff. Instagram. So we're kind of all over the place.
Very cool. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you talking to me today about all the changes going on with your comic book world and all the stores and online. And I want to thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Phil Schlaefer, for being my special guest. Episode number 73 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Pills in the pink electric church. sucker of your blue jeweled boob. To